This event took place in Israel. That Chava Kornfeld, 60 years old, had no ties to Judaism was the least we could say. She was even anti-religious. It was simple. She just could not stand religious people. Whoever they were, whichever their trends or styles, she only felt disgust and contempt for them. Leaving aside the aversion she always felt, without knowing why, Chava was always cheerful and had every reason to be happy. A loving husband, comfortable financial situation, all her children were married. She was soon becoming a grandmother, and her job gave her great satisfaction. For over 30 years, her job had been to detect learning difficulties in children. She had great listening skills, great sensitivity, and always gave spot-on advice. Thanks to her thousands of pupils, managed to successfully develop both their intellectual and emotional skills. In short, everything was going well in her life, except for her unexplained dislike towards Judaism and those who observed it. One Shabbos morning, Chava got up early as usual to go for her daily walk. Men were coming in and out of shul wrapped in their talesim, but to her, they represented the exile, darkness, days gone by. Seemingly indifferent, she did not even bother looking at them. At some point, she noticed Avigdor, the family doctor, whom she greeted politely before noticing he was wearing a kippah. He greeted her back, "Shabbat Shalom, Mrs. Kornfeld." Surprised, she didn't reply. "I didn't know you're religious." "I'm not religious," he answered. Chava was perplexed. "So where are you going with a kippah on your head?" "To synagogue." "There's nothing unusual here. Jew going to synagogue must wear a kippah. That's it. I didn't invent it." But Chava insisted. "So you're religious?" Avigdor smiled. "No, Mrs. Kornfeld, I'm just a Jew, a mere Jew." Chava knew not what to answer. Strangely, this statement from her doctor, whom she had known for over 20 years, moved her deeply. Apart from his kippah, she noticed for the first time he'd never shown any external religious sign. Now she saw him quietly going to a synagogue, joining the religious people she couldn't stand. "I'm just a Jew, a mere Jew." These words echoed in her mind and left her restless. She knew she had heard them somewhere, but she couldn't remember who had said the words that tormented her. Troubled, she sat on a bench, began to think. 1 hour, 2 hours, but still nothing. Ready to cry, she ended up praying to the Creator. "Master of the world, where have I heard this sentence, and why does it trouble me so deeply? Help me, please." Then she remembered. Chava first reminisced her youth as the only child of Holocaust survivors. At home, her parents never mentioned their trauma. Thick silence always prevailed. The atmosphere was heavy and suffocating. Her father was completely withdrawn and almost never spoke, except for a few words from time to time. He was hardened, serious, and completely invested in his work at the manufacturing plant. One day, as Chava was still in high school, her mother, a kind-hearted woman, died suddenly, while her father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's shortly afterwards. Imagine what Chava was going through at only 16 years old. She became an orphan, deprived of her mother's love and support, and her relatively young father was losing his memory day by day. Terrible. Her father would sit for hours with a vacant look in his eyes, not saying a word. Chava often stayed with him as she did not want him to wither away alone. One day, after 3 years of sickness, during a moment of clarity, he looked up, turned to his daughter and shared, "After years of suffering during the Holocaust, I wanted to die. I couldn't go on any longer. My whole body was mutilated. I was starving. I barely weighed 66 pounds. I was left without parents, brothers, sisters. I had no hope left, nothing. Then a soldier appeared out of nowhere. He was at least 6 feet tall, pulled out his gun, held it against my temple, and yelled, "Dirty Jew, who are you?" I didn't understand his question, or why he was asking me this. I just replied, "I'm just a Jew, a mere Jew." I was sure he was going to kill me, but instead, he placed his gun back into its holster and left as swiftly as he arrived. After this recollection, Chava's father slipped back into his usual lethargy and died a few days later. For decades, Chava kept the words her father spoke before leaving this world buried deep in her subconscious. The little insignificant statement, "I am just a Jew, a mere Jew," had eventually affected Chava even after all these years. All these memories deeply buried in her pushed her to do some soul searching. She gradually came to realize that her hatred of religion was some sort of subconscious revenge against God for what her parents had suffered. Several days later, Chava went to seminary to learn about Judaism. 6 months had passed when one Shabbos morning, she bumped once again into Avigdor, her doctor, who was stunned to see her head was covered and her clothes were modest. Chava smiled and greeted him warmly. "Shabbat Shalom, doctor. I too am just a Jew, a mere Jew." The Chidah teaches us that when one experiences spiritual awakening or desire for divine service, one must set out to act without delay, as the Yetzer Hara will rush, dishearten, and discourage one's efforts. Shabbat Shalom.